Okay, so how to do question number 1. Let's read the question. Determine the volume of each object. Let's look at part A. In order to do part A, we must know the shape is a rectangular prism. And if you look at our formula sheet for finding the volume of a rectangular prism, we will get the answer base times height. Now, what is base? Well, if you look at the bottom of this rectangular prism right here, you're going to see that this bottom is actually a shape. It's a rectangle. So if I draw this out like such, or that kind of looks like a square, but then it's a rectangle. The bottom is going to be 23.4 like this, and the side will be 11.7 like that. So basically, if we find the area of the base, or and like fill it up, if we find this area, and all we have to do is once we do that, we have to multiply that by height, which is 15.6 right here. Now let's do this. How do you find a real area of a rectangle? Well, that's length times width. Now let's replace these variables with actual numbers. Our length is 23.4, so let's write that down. 23.4 multiplied by our width, which is 11.7, 11.7. And we multiply this together, we're going to get 273.8. Once we have this, this is our base. And now we simply have to multiply it with our height, which is 15.6. So let me make that clear. 273.8, not 2,738. So 273.8 multiplied by 15.6 is equal to 4,271.3. This is our volume, but we have to make sure to write this properly. We can't just leave it like 2,701.3. We have to give our measurements, and this is measured in inches, and since this is a volume, we put cubed or tiny 3 on top of the inches. Now let's look at part B. Part B is a triangular prism. How do we solve this? Well, first we need to look at the formula sheet. The formula sheet will tell us base times height. Now this question is kind of misleading. You would normally think that the triangle's height would be 7.2 and the base is 4, but you would be incorrect. If you lay this down on the map and make this straight in a 2D view, let me redraw that. If you make this straight in a 2D view, it's going to look something like this. And as you can see, we have a right angle drawn out over here, which means that this side, 6 is going to be our base, and 4 is going to be our height. So don't get that confused. Now, let's find the base. So what is the formula for finding the area of a triangle? Look at the formula sheets. Well, the answer to that is base times height divided by 2. Now let's do this. What is our base? Our base is 6, and we multiply it by 4, and we divide it by 2. So first, 6 times 4, let's multiply that together and give an answer. 6 times 4 is 24. Now, finally, we just divide this by 2 and we get 12. Now, 12 is the area of our triangle base. We simply multiply the base by the height, so 12 times 8, which is the height, so times 8, and that equals to 96. And we need to put in our measurements. This one was measured in feet, so we're going to say 96 feet, and since this is volume, we put cubed, not squared. Let's go to part C. Okay, so here's how you do part C. Now, for part C, we have a cylinder, which means that the base is going to be a circle. Let's look at the formula sheet on how to find the volume of a cylinder. The answer is going to be base times height. Now, the base, as we said, is a circle. So how do we find the base, or how do we find the area of a circle? We know that the radius is 5. So let's look at the formula sheet for the formula of finding the area of a circle. The answer is pi, or 3.14, multiplied by the radius squared. And this can also be written down as pi 3.14 multiplied by radius multiplied by radius. Now let's switch out our r with a number value. So we're going to write down 3.14 multiplied by 5 squared, or which can also be written down as 3.14 multiplied by 5 so it can also be written down as 3.14 times 5 times 5. Now, if we multiply 5 and 5 together, we get 25. So 3.14 times 25. Finally, if you multiply 25 with our pi for 3.14, we get our answer, which is 78.5. And once again, we find our measurement, which is centimeters, so centimeters squared, since it's area. Now that we have the area of our circle, we multiply it by our height, which is a, and we will get our volume. So 78.5 multiplied by 8, and the answer is 628, and we will now put our measurement, centimeters cubed, because it's volume. So that's how you find part C. Let's move on to question 2. So let's read question 2. Determine the surface area of each object. Let's look at part A. How do you find the surface area of a rectangular prism? Let's look at our formula sheets. The formula is surface area, or A, is equal to 2 times width times height plus length times width plus length times height. This looks pretty complicated, but let me break it down for you on why the formula looks like it does. If we want to find the surface area of any shape, all we have to do is find the area of each side, so each side, and then add it all up together. So if you were to do this, for example, let's start with the base, or the bottom side. We would multiply our length with our width, and we get the area of our bottom side. But what we can do to make things faster is we can multiply whatever our result is with 2, because we know that our top side is exactly equal to our bottom side. So these areas are gonna be the same. So we simply multiply whatever area we get on each side by 2, and hence why we're multiplying by 2. Now we simply just get the areas between our width and our height. So this side right here, our length and our height. So this side right here, and our width and our length and width. So this bottom side right here. And when we do, we multiply by 2 to get every side along our rectangle. So this might be a bit confusing, but bear with me here. Let's put numbers in our formula. So a is equal to 2, and then our width, which is 11.7, multiplied by our height, which is 15.6, plus our length, which is 23.4, multiplied by our width, which is 11.7, and finally our length, which is 23.4, multiplied by our height, which is 15.6. Now let's multiply everything together. I'm going to do everything in a single step so we can save some time, but you guys can pause the video and take your own time. So the answer is, now let me write this down, 281.34. Now we simply multiply this number by 2, so a is equal to, and once we multiply, we'll get the answer of 562.68, or we can also write this down as 562.7. And once again, we'll need to put our measurements. So it is in inches, and since this is the surface area, we're only going to put square. We're finding area, not volume. Let's move on to part B. Over here, we have a triangular prism. So how do we find the surface area of a triangular prism? Let's look at our formula. So the formula for finding a triangular prism is very confusing, but let me break it down for you. Basically, on a triangular prism, we can separate it into a few shapes. I'll pause the video and make the shapes, and I'll show you guys once I'm done. Okay, so I'm back. Here we have a few shapes. Now, immediately we can see that these two shapes are the same. So keep that in mind for now. We have 3 rectangles that could each have separate volumes, so they don't have to be the same size, and 2 triangles that are identical. Now let's look at our formula sheet. For this, we're gonna have a base, or I'm gonna call it a triangle for now. So the area of the triangle, like this, and we're gonna say base times over 2, right? So basically we're saying the base of the triangle, which we know is 6 from here, and the length of the triangle, which we know is 4 from here. Now let's actually solve the triangle for now. let's do that. A triangle is equal to 4 times 6, so 4 multiplied by 6, which will equal to 4 times 6, 24, and we finally divide it by 2, and I'm putting this all on the same line just so it's more simple, straightforward, and divide by 2, we get 12. So we know that this triangle is going to be the area of 12, and we also know that since both of these triangles are identical, they're both area of 12. So now we know our A triangle area. Now let's look at the rectangles. Since each rectangle has a separate area or could have a separate area, we have to calculate them separately. Now, let's start off with the biggest one, this one right here. We know that the length of it is 6, the height of it is 8. So 6 times 8 is, or let me write that down. So A rectangle, A, or sorry, I wrote that wrong. Rectangles, and we know that the big one, at least for now, is 6 times 8, which is 48. So 48. One of them is 48. We got one of them down. Now let's look at the second one. This one right here. Now this one, its side length is 7.2. So 7.2, and I know that these images aren't accurate to how it looks, but just bear with me here. So 7.2 is the base, and the height is 8. So 7.2 times 8, and our answer is 57.6. So 57.6. Now finally, we have the smallest triangle right here, which is going to be, the bottom is 4, the side is 8. So 4 times 8 is equal to 32. So let's write that out. Plus 32. Now, as you can see, for our A rectangles, all we are doing is we're finding the area of each piece of the rectangle on this triangular prism, and we're adding it together. So that's basically all you have to do. That's the logic behind it. So let's do this. Add everything together and you get 137.6. So let's write that down. A rectangles is equal to 137.6. Now, if we want to find our total area, which let's call A total, all we have to do is add our rectangles to our triangles. But the thing is, we only found the area for one triangle. So over here, we're going to put triangle times 2 so we can get the area for both of our triangles. So let's do that. 2 times a triangle, or I'm just going to write AT for now, and then we add it to a rectangle, AR. Okay, now let's swap that out with our numbers. So we know that our A total is going to be 2 times 12 plus our AR is 137.6. And if we add or multiply the 2 and the 12 first because of med mass, we're going to get 24, and we add that with 137.6, which in total will give us